Brand new product announcement from this video sponsor and longtime channel partner, SteelSeries. Just yesterday, they released their first ever set of earbuds specifically designed for both gaming and everyday use. Their Arctis Game Buds support 2.4 GHz wireless, Bluetooth, active noise cancelling, and up to 40 hours of use before having to plug them in. I've been using them for the past month and they are fantastic, and you can get a 12% discount on them when you use offer code SKILLUP at checkout. Stick around to the end of the video to learn more. Gamers, alright, between the Concord news and the Dragon Age Veilguard reviews, there is just so much going on this week that I don't even have time for a pithy intro block, so let's just jump right into it. Yes, it's true, Concord is now officially the biggest live service flop in video game history, with Sony putting a bow on the story this week by formally announcing the closure of Firewalk Studios, the studio they acquired just a few short years earlier, as well as the closure of a separate and unrelated studio called Neon Koei, who were working on one or more live service mobile games. The announcement came from PlayStation boss himself, Herman Hulst. Here's what he had to say, quote, "We constantly evaluate our games portfolio and status of our projects to ensure we are meeting near and long-term business priorities. As part of our ongoing efforts to strengthen SIE's studio business, we've had to make a difficult decision relating to two of our studios, Neon Koei and Firewalk Studios. Expanding beyond PlayStation devices and crafting engaging online experiences alongside our single-player games are key focal areas for us as we evolve our revenue streams. We need to be strategic, though, in bringing our games to new platforms and recognize when our games fall short of meeting players' expectations," end quote. This is all, of course, his way of saying that those two studios are closing, and in the case of Concord, it's not a big surprise. It is no secret that Concord's launch was a Hindenburg-level disaster, achieving just a few hundred peak concurrent players, significantly lower than what the game was able to achieve during its open beta tests, which, incidentally, were the only times when Concord was actually free to play, since the release product had a $40 asking price. When Sony took the game offline, we all wondered if they might retool it and bring it back as a free-to-play offering, something that Hulst addressed in a roundabout way later in his blog post, quote, "Regarding Firewalk, as announced in early September, certain aspects of Concord were exceptional, but others did not land with enough players, and as a result we took the game offline. We have spent considerable time these past few months exploring all our options. After much thought, we've determined the best path forward is to permanently sunset the game and close the studio. I want to thank all of Firewalk for their craftsmanship, creative spirit, and dedication," end quote. There are, or were, roughly 170 developers working at Firewalk, and now all of those people are out of the job. In addition, there were 38 or so people working at Neon Koei who were also out as well. The wording of Hulst's announcement was fairly brisk, almost like ripping the band-aid off. No doubt the Concord saga is one that Sony are very keen to move on from ASAP, not just because of the reputational damage for all of those involved, but also the financial impact for Sony. Kotaku are reporting that they have two sources who confirmed the initial development deal for the game was just over $200 million, but that was not enough to cover the game's entire development timeline, nor the purchase of the Concord IP rights or the purchase of the studio itself. It's not clear how high the ceiling was for Sony's Concord spend, but even at $200 million, it already ranks as one of the biggest blunders in video game history. Firewalk issued a farewell message in light of the news saying, quote, "We took some risks along the way, marrying aspects of card battlers and fighting games with first-person shooters, and although some of these and other aspects of the IP didn't land as we had hoped, the idea of putting new things into the world is critical to pushing the medium forward," end quote. And that's true, and I really hope that history remembers Concord as a fundamentally good game. Not great, it definitely had its problems, it definitely needed more development time to test and refine its ideas, but fundamentally, it was pretty good. And as we look back on Concord in the years to come, I hope that point isn't lost amongst the noise. What is clear with this closure and the closure of Neon Koei and the cancellation of a number of high-profile Sony live service development projects is that Sony are pulling up from their live service nosedive. From the moment we learned that they had 12 live service projects in development, that seemed like an insane number for a publisher who had won the console war on the back of incredible single-player games. Now, after so much treasure spilled, Sony seems to be retreating from those live service ambitions. The question is, though, what replaces that strategy? Game development costs have skyrocketed, console sales are down, and Sony's margins are now razor thin. It's easy to say, just make more 10 out of 10 single-player games, but delivering on that is extraordinarily difficult, and with this live service push now winding down, I'm sure Sony are doing plenty of internal planning meetings to figure out what comes next. Moving on to other news now, and Dragon Age The Veilguard reviews have dropped, and they are positive, almost universally so. While there were a few reviewers who were lukewarm on the game or flat out didn't recommend it, most critics really gelled with this one, propelling it to an 82 on OpenCritic. Push Square quite enjoyed it, for example. They scored it an 8 out of 10, saying, quote, "Dragon Age The Veilguard isn't quite BioWare back to its absolute best, but it's the most cohesive and emotionally engaging RPG that the studio has delivered since Mass Effect 3, end quote. Paul Tassi of Forbes gave it an 8.5, saying, quote, "Is this a game Dragon Age fans have waited a decade for? I have no idea. Maybe not. But for me, someone who couldn't get through any of the other games, I often couldn't wait to play more of the Veilguard. It could have used some editing, more gameplay complexity, and maybe some sharper writing in parts, but it did many things well and I enjoyed my time with it quite a bit," end quote. My review has done the rounds, certainly a lot more than I would have expected. You've probably seen it, but if you haven't, I was not a fan of Veilguard. I actually found this to be a very disappointing experience that failed to meet any of my hopes or expectations. The review is obviously very detailed in how I explain all of that, but the long and the short of it is that tonally, Dragon Age The Veilguard feels more like a young adult fantasy novel than something truly intended for adults. It constantly sits in this half-jokey, lighthearted tone while being completely devoid of anything that might be considered dark or confronting. Its core RPG systems, like dialogue choices or consequence-based decision-making, are either non-existent or just fig leaf, and its combat is so shallow and mindless and repetitive that I ended up lowering the difficulty at the 40-hour mark just to get through combat sequences more quickly. As I said at both the top and bottom of that review, that is my take, but not everyone is going to see it that way. That's how it goes with any piece of media, but especially a sequel to a long-running video game franchise from a big legacy studio like BioWare. There's always a lot riding on those sorts of releases, a lot of fixation on what the reviews do or don't say. My advice as always though is listen to a few different perspectives, and if you're still in doubt, try and buy from somewhere that has a generous refund policy so you can try the game for a few hours and maybe get your money back if you're not vibing with it. None of the negative reviews have seemed to have put a dent in the game's commercial performance, by the way, as Dragon Age briefly became the most pre-ordered game on Steam. The game has just launched at the time of writing and it's already surpassed 65,000 concurrent players. That number is still rapidly rising. Now we'll see what the punters think about this one. I personally think we're going to see a bigger spread of opinion on it than what was reflected in the reviews, but we'll circle back to that in future once people have had a chance to put some time into the game. One interesting tidbit to shake out of all of this was an update on the Mass Effect project that BioWare are currently working on. This was revealed some time ago. We knew that it was BioWare's next cab off the rank after Veilguard. Very unclear when we should expect it, but with Veilguard now out the door, that project will no doubt be getting a big injection of resources, so things will start moving quickly. One area where Veilguard has copped a lot of flack is its character designs. It's something I spoke about in my review. I don't like these designs at all. They look like Pixar or DreamWorks characters, and they're a big departure from the more realistic designs that BioWare were going for with previous Dragon Age games. Now, Mike Gamble is the project lead for the new Mass Effect, and he took to Twitter to offer some clarification on what BioWare are shooting for with this new entry, and his comments are clearly a response to some of that discourse around Veilguard's character designs. His thread started this way, quote, "Lots of people asking me about Mass Effect now that Veilguard reviews are out and October 31st is close. Both are from the studio, but Mass Effect is Mass Effect. How you bring a sci-fi RPG to life is different than other genres or IPs and has to have different kinds of love," end quote. A Twitter user responded saying, quote, "Please don't Pixar Mass Effect like you guys did with Dragon Age," end quote. And Gamble responded thusly, quote, "I'm not sure I agree with the Pixar thing, but Mass Effect is photorealistic and it will be as long as I'm running it," end quote. So that's a pretty decisive statement on what we should expect from the series visually, but there was also plenty of chatter about the kind of light-hearted tone that Veilguard has adopted. It really is very PG-13. It never has any moments that come within a country mile of the sort of darkness, violence, and brutality that were previously very commonplace in the series. Gamble also took time to clarify how he and the team plan to approach tone in the new entry. Quote, "Regarding tone questions, Mass Effect will maintain the mature tone of the original trilogy. That is all I'm going to say for now," end quote. Honestly, hearing all of this, it's a huge relief. Mass Effect has always delivered a deeply political, sophisticated sci-fi universe, never shying away from adult themes and gritty characters. To know that the Mass Effect team are planning to maintain that tone, that is good news, because as I said in my Veilguard review, the lack of truly confronting events, the lack of conflict between party members, and the general brightness of tone were some of my biggest pain points during my playthrough. On to other news now. Firewalk is gone, BioWare is holding on, but one studio we really wish would just piss off is Fantastic, makers of the day before. They recently resurfaced to announce that they were back at it, working on a new game, only this time they had sense enough to ask for our money before we all realized how full of shit they were. They launched a Kickstarter aiming to raise some $20,000, but after weeks of Twitter spam, they only managed to raise around $3,000. As such, Fantastic announced this week that they were cancelling that project. Quote, "We have received many requests for a prop hunt game. Okay, I'm going to stop you right there. No one is asking you to make any games right now, okay? That's a fucking lie. Anyway, back to the quote. After careful analysis and discussion with the team, we have decided that our Escape Factory project has not generated enough interest. Our campaign on Kickstarter is unlikely to reach our goal of 20,000 Singaporean dollars. We have decided to temporarily suspend work on Escape Factory and postpone it until a more appropriate time. As part of this decision, our Kickstarter campaign has also been cancelled and no funds have been collected, end quote. So now they've announced a new game that they're making called Items. Here's what Fantastic had to say about it. Quote, "This is exactly what many of you have been waiting for." Okay, I'm going to stop you right there again. Also a lie. Not a single soul on God's green earth has been waiting for this, okay? They continued. "Once we have a fully playable demo, we may launch a new Kickstarter campaign or explore other options for release. It is important to us that our players get the chance to play and test the game in advance," end quote. So how will they get the funds needed to make this game without a Kickstarter? Well, the answer is simple. Make mobile games. Quote, "Since the development of Items will require significant resources, we've decided to release mobile games in parallel to support the process. All funds generated from these apps will go directly into development. We believe this will help us create the game of your dreams," end quote. Final point of clarification, in no reality is anyone dreaming about a game made by you people. Anyway, the best part of this though is that these dudes are up to their old tricks. Remember when they announced that their workforce were all volunteers and you could offer to work for them for free? If you were so inclined. Well, The Gamer has been hanging out in the Fantastic Discord and they spotted that Fantastic are holding a level design competition where you can do their level design work for them, and if you win that competition, the prize is a free copy of the game on Steam. That's it. That's what they're doing. I honestly, truly hope these guys never stop trying to make games because honestly, covering their bullshit, it's just too funny. And finally, speaking of bullshit we thought we were done with, did you know that Ubisoft just released an honest-to-goodness NFT game in the year of our Lord 2024? It's true, I'm not making it up. It's called Champions Tactics Grimoria Chronicles, and it's a competitive multiplayer turn-based RPG that uses playable figurines that hit each other or something. I honestly don't care enough to find out any specifics. As part of this release, they've minted 75,000 champion thingies, and the publicly viewable marketplace sees figures going for as high as 63,000 US dollars. I genuinely look forward to checking on these prices in about 2 weeks' time, when the price of the same champion will have no doubt dropped to like $6.30. Which is just about the same rate of decline as Ubisoft's share price over the past 5 years, so, you know, it all kind of lines up. A quick lightning round to finish off, and sticking with Ubisoft a while longer, they're going to need to sell a hell of a lot of NFTs to dig themselves out of their current financial troubles. At a recent earnings call, they revealed that net bookings were down 22% year on year, largely owed to the underperformance of Star Wars Outlaws, which launched to middling reviews that no doubt affected sales. CEO Yves Guillemot tried to put on a brave face, but the best he could muster was this, quote, "Despite recent setbacks, we are continuing to deeply transform Ubisoft in order to restore the levels of creativity and innovation that built Ubisoft's success while delivering stronger execution and predictability," end quote. Yeah, man, I'm sure that NFT game is really going to help on that front. Keep it up. Thankfully, Ubisoft are still trying to make some actual video games. This week, they confirmed to Kotaku that Ubisoft Montpellier was in the early stages of making a new Rayman game, and that is awesome. Love to see it. Recently, that studio confirmed that they were not working on a new Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown game, and that was disappointing, but if the consolation prize is the return of Rayman, then yeah, that's at least some silver lining and all that. Meanwhile, the most vaporware game in the history of vaporware just got a new game director. Beyond Good and Evil 2 has been in development since before the Wright brothers took to the skies, and despite the release of a number of trailers and gameplay snippets, it still appears to be stuck in the pre-production phase. Hopefully one Fawzi Mesmer can sort this mess out. They were just appointed as creative director after earlier being VP of Ubisoft's editorial team. He put out a statement saying, quote, "I am standing on the shoulders of creative giants that have supported the team before me, and I look forward to continuing to craft a game that is truly unique for players to enjoy," end quote. Looking forward to getting hands-on with this one sometime before the rapture. Speaking of personnel changes, this is a really interesting one. Brian Horton was creative director for the upcoming Wolverine game being made by Insomniac, but he's no longer in that role and has taken up a new mantle as creative director of the upcoming Perfect Dark game being developed by Crystal Dynamics and The Initiative. This news was first reported by Stephen DiTillo in his GameFile newsletter. This is a really weird and unexpected change. Xbox did confirm that he's in that Perfect Dark role now, but no one has confirmed why Horton left Insomniac. I do wonder if we'll hear more about that in the future, because stepping away from creative director on a marquee release like a Wolverine game is a pretty big decision. I'll let you know if more details surface. And finally, did you know that Nintendo just released a music app for your phone that lets you listen to nothing but Nintendo music? That's right, they're going head-to-head with Spotify. It's a dedicated app that requires a Nintendo Online membership and allows you to stream various Nintendo tracks with full support for custom and recommended playlists and offline listening. Nintendo has recently been on a tear lately, pulling down a number of YouTube videos that let you listen to Nintendo-owned OSTs, and I guess this is why. I fully expect a large number of YouTube Let's Plays, reviews, and streams to be caught up in this. Since we all use Nintendo's music very liberally, content creators are going to have to be a lot more careful from now on, and everyone else, enjoy the dedicated Nintendo music app that you have to pay for. Honestly, man, all we want is Switch 2, and Nintendo is giving us like alarm clocks and music apps. Sometimes their weirdness is cool, other times it's just, yeah, weird. So what got announced or delayed this week? Honestly, not a whole lot, since the Xbox partner preview from the week prior sucked up a lot of the reveals for this month, including ones for new indies like Annapurna's Wheel World, and bigger ones like Chronos the New Dawn from Bloober Team, and of course FBC Firebreak, the new multiplayer FPS from Remedy set in the Control universe. One announcement worth pointing out is that Capcom announced an open beta for Monster Hunter Wilds! Why did I just sound like open then? Officially, the open beta starts on November 1st for PC, PlayStation 5, and Xbox Series consoles, and it runs until November 4th. However, PlayStation Plus subscribers got an extra open beta period, which should be wrapping up right about the time this video goes live. Jumping into the open beta gets you some small bonuses for the full game and lets you carry over your custom character too, but if you're one of the many Monster Hunter fans, you probably don't need convincing to jump in. Say hi to the Doshiguma for me. Another little announcement popped up for Animal Crossing Pocket Camp Complete. This is the offline version of the free-to-play mobile Animal Crossing game which released back in 2017, and it's ending live service at the end of November. Nintendo is surprisingly making good on a move here to release a version of the app that collects all 7 years of online content and lets you preserve your save file if you have that. The one catch is that it'll cost $10 to purchase when it launches on December 3rd, and that price is going up to $20 at the end of January, so $20 for a mobile game that was free and whatever. Look, just if you want to get it, get in fast. Here's a cool surprise. Cyberpunk is headed to Mac. It's happening early next year, and it'll be a package that includes both the base game and Phantom Liberty. It comes as Apple announced a new M4 chipset lineup for both their Mac Minis and their MacBooks. It's going to be really interesting to see how Cyberpunk runs on Apple Silicon, actually. Biggest announcement of the week for my money, I can scarcely believe it. Xenoblade Chronicles X is finally coming to the Switch. You do not understand how much I love this game. Like, you genuinely don't. It is my favorite Xenoblade game. The mechs are so fucking cool. The music goes incredibly hard, and I just love this game, and I've been wanting to replay it for years. It seemed like Nintendo just weren't interested in bringing it to the Switch for whatever reason, but they've listened to all our begging and pleading, and on March 20th next year, Xenoblade Chronicles X will arrive on the Switch. I absolutely cannot wait. One delay announcement this week, and it really stings. Path of Exile 2 was set to launch into early access in mid-November, but now it'll arrive on December 6th. It's only a short delay, but given how pumped I am for that one, I am deeply unhappy about it. And finally, just one cancellation this week, and it's Minecraft announcing that its PC VR modes will no longer be supported come March 2025. This one's not too surprising given they announced the end of PlayStation VR support a few weeks back, but no doubt some enthusiastic modder will be on the case very soon. So what came out last week? Well, Rivals of Aether 2 is the sequel to the indie platforming fighting game for people who wanted Smash Brothers to be a more hardcore fighting game, and the community behind it seemed to think they did a good job. It's sitting at a very positive rating on Steam, with the overall sentiment being that if you miss the style of high-speed technical play that Smash Brothers Melee had, then you're probably going to enjoy this. Steam user Fisticuffs says, quote, "A platform fighter designed for online competitive play first and anything else dead last, putting it opposite most Smash Brothers games. If you're looking for Super Smash Brothers Melee style mechanics implemented in a mashing-free, accessible way and want to play this game primarily against local or online opponents, it's a no-brainer purchase," end quote. On the flip side, Steam user Osiris said, "If you aren't sure if this game is for you, just ask yourself this question. Have you been playing Super Smash Bros. Melee regularly for the last 20 years? If the answer is no, then this game is not for you." Seems like a very sensible recommendation. Wilmot Works Out is the charming jigsaw puzzle organization game from the people behind the recently released Flock and Hohokum, and it's sitting at a strong 79 on OpenCritic with its relaxed gameplay winning over a lot of critics. Eurogamer gave this one 4 out of 5 stars, saying, quote, "Wilmot's gentle and relaxing jigsaw puzzles won't tax you in the slightest, but this warm bubble bath of a game is very soothing, and it weaves a surprising tale of companionship and friends found around the edges," end quote. Most other outlets have had similar takes, like Polygon, who said, quote, "Some might end up thinking that this game gets repetitive after a while because well, it does. But in my view, that's the point. It's a predictable, comfortable game that's kept interesting by the silly overarching storyline involving Postman Sam and her oversharing with Wilmot, and the puzzles do seem to get more challenging as the game progresses, end quote. Square Enix's remakes of the 1993 Super Famicom RPG Romancing Saga 2 Revenge of the Seven also came out last week, and that's done very well for itself with a strong 82 on OpenCritic, which is quite an achievement considering that the more recent games in this series have been a bit more divisive with their unique takes on the genre. As a reminder, this is an RPG with a non-linear structure and no XP system. CG Mag gave this one an 8 out of 10, saying, quote, "As a pivotal experiment by Saga creator and lead developer Kawazu, a creator who pushed so hard to evolve this genre, it's a history lesson, and history isn't without its warts, but we can still learn from it, and Square Enix has done another outstanding job in attempting to make it palatable to modern tastes," end quote. Digitally Downloaded also loved this one, scoring it 4.5 out of 5 stars, and remarking that, quote, "Square Enix picked an exceptional game to remake, and then did an exceptional job in remaking it. Romancing Saga 2 Revenge of the Seven is a true epic, and a game that comes across as ambitious to this day," end quote. Sonic X Shadows Generations has sold an absolute boatload, but it's also done pretty well for itself critically. It's sitting at a strong OpenCritic rating of 80, with people seeming to appreciate the new Shadow Generations campaign, but wishing for a little more improvement on the Sonic side of things. The gamer gave it 4 out of 5 overall, saying that, quote, "Shadow Generations is the Sonic Generations remake I was hoping for, with tighter controls, better level designs, and superior bosses. It frustrates me that few of these improvements trickle down into Sonic Generations, but as a whole product, it's hard to fold a package that gives us a faithful remaster of one of the most beloved Sonic games and a great Shadow game to boot," end quote. GameSpot were notably more disappointed with how outdated the package felt, saying, quote, "The collection feels much like its protagonist, lost in a place out of time and desperate to return to fonder times. It's a nice enough trip down memory lane, but the trip features all the speed bumps you'd expect from games of that era," end quote. Now, Shadow of the Hedgehog doesn't use guns anymore, but one person who does love using guns is every single person in a Call of Duty game. And speaking of which, Black Ops 6 has launched last week, and there were only a handful of reviews at the time of writing. It seems like everyone's just kind of working through this one, but what's in is very positive. A lot of in-progress reviews for this one, like very, very thumbs up, and it's actually sitting at a mighty OpenCritic score of 85. Here's what IGN had to say about the campaign, which it gave a 9 out of 10, quote, "Packing a thoroughly engaging story that gets better the longer it goes on, it exceeds expectations regarding level design and creativity, showing that when given the time to craft them properly, COD campaigns still have what it takes to be up there with the best first-person shooters," end quote. Press Start was equally effusive, giving it an 8.5 out of 10 and saying, quote, "This campaign felt like a particularly confident foot forward for a franchise under new rule. Not only does it function as the best 5-hour onboarding for Call of Duty's multiplayer ever, it delivers the bonkers twist you'd expect from a Black Ops, a fun cast to rally behind, and it's rooted in just enough real-world politics to serve as a compelling what-if," end quote. Looks like this is a good year to launch COD on Game Pass. I know a lot of people couldn't care less about the multiplayer side of things, but are always curious about the campaign. Now they won't necessarily need to shell out $70 to check it out. And finally, ending on something a little less shooty, Life is Strange Double Exposure is the latest in the narrative series, another developed by Deck 9 after Don't Nod pieced out to go explore other stories. Now, there was a lot of heated chatter during its 2-chapter early access period from the very avid Life is Strange fanbase, particularly surrounding what the game did to the story of the original protagonist Max, who returns in this one. For those unaware, every Life is Strange season has followed completely different characters up to this point, so it did feel like a bit of a commercial play. That's resulted in some pretty varied reviews for the full season, with kudos being offered to the visual direction and gameplay ideas, but strong opinions about the characters and writing. PC Gamer gave this one a solid 72, but said of it, quote, "I felt like a lot of these characters didn't have time to fully develop, coupled with Double Exposure's parallel narrative arc being a little too similar and on the nose for my liking at times. I have to wonder if we needed a sequel at all," end quote. Eurogamer gave this one 3 out of 5 stars, but did ultimately see the good in it, concluding, quote, "Despite Double Exposure's finer moments and startling vision to move the series forward, what's here now doesn't feel as assured as a step as I'd have liked. While visually polished, there's just one too many narrative rough edges and not enough resolution when it's all said and done. I'm still keen to see what happens next, particularly how Double Exposure's ending is received and discussed by fans over the coming months and years, and whether the impact of Max's first outing, which resonated so strongly and for so long, can be repeated here or elsewhere down the line. Continuing Life is Strange has never been straightforward, but then sometimes there is no correct choice to be made," end quote. Alrighty, so what's coming out this week? Well, kicking things off is some digital crack. The Pokemon trading card game is getting a new official mobile app this week, which comes out on October 30th for iOS and Android. It's called Pokemon TCG Pocket, and they're selling this on the premise of its casual card collecting aspect and, you know, pretty looking pictures of Pokemon, but there's also a condensed version of the card battle game in there as well, something in the vein of Marvel Snap. competition about to get very fierce out there. Moving on to Thursday, October 31st, Halloween, and it's a big old release day for video games. Dragon Age Arise, but we've already talked about that one earlier in the show. Also on the 31st is yet another PlayStation remaster, this one for the original Horizon Zero Dawn, which came out in 2017. Lots of annoying behavior from Sony behind this one, from removing the original Steam release entirely after the announcement of the remaster, to doubling the price of the PS4 version so newcomers couldn't get the benefit of a cheap upgrade, to the mandatory PSN login, which I guess is just a part of life now. Anyway, PC and PS5 for this remaster, with the work being handled by the ever-reliable Nixxes software, so even if there is no need for this remaster, at least it'll probably run really well. One remaster that is absolutely necessary is Shadows of the Dam Remastered, which arrives on Halloween, coming to all consoles. This is an action collaboration between Resident Evil creator Shinji Mikami and No More Heroes creator Suda51, which mixes Resident Evil 4 style action in a grindhouse style story that has more dick jokes than you can shake a stick at. EA were surprisingly the original publishers for this game, and if this is the version that got approved, I can only imagine what the original unhinged version was like. This game originally came out back in 2011, but it was made right after Mikami had made Resident Evil 4, God Hand, and Vanquish, so you know there is a good-ass video game in there somewhere. Speaking of good-ass video games, Vampire Survivors is getting the DLC pack it probably never ever dreamed of getting, Ode to Castlevania. Yes, Konami's free-for-all attitude to licensing their IP for good or bad has leaned in the good direction this time, with 20 Castlevania characters to play on the game's biggest stage to date. A pretty neat turn of events, given that this game was clearly paying loving homage to the Castlevania series in more ways than one, and perhaps too many ways, but that's a separate story. This expansion will be available on every platform Vampire Survivors is, that is to say absolutely everywhere, though it's worth flagging that the Apple Arcade version of the game hasn't gotten the licensed IP crossover expansions in the past, so the same will probably hold true here as well. And the last release for Halloween is Redacted. Like, that's actually its name. It's a really terrible name, especially in this era of SEO, but, you know, obviously the folks at Striking Distance didn't get the memo. They're the people who made the Callisto Protocol. This one is definitely not a Callisto Protocol sequel, though. It's a spin-off from the Callisto Protocol, but instead of being a photorealistic survival horror game, this one is a schlocky comic book style isometric roguelike action game. Those are, generally speaking, pretty popular, and this one looks pretty neat at first glance, so hopefully the smaller project will give the team a nice shot in the arm. This one's out on PC, PS5, and Xbox Series consoles. And last one for the week, on Tuesday, November 5th, we're getting Metal Slug Tactics. This is an adaptation of SNK's very well-animated shoot-'em-up series that was popular in the late 90s, translating it to a genre that is very popular right now. Given the military themes, it makes a lot of sense, and the art looks like it's staying more or less true to the series, but it's all in the tactical mechanics in the end, so hopefully they're solid. It's being developed by a studio called Lykear, who are responsible for that really nice looking strategy game Synergy, which we featured on the Steam Next Fest roundup a little while back. Metal Slug Tactics will be available for all platforms. Staying with the mid-90s, early 2000s now, this next game was only just announced, but given the excellent vibes, you probably want to put this one on your radar. So a while ago, we featured a game called Home Safety Hotline, which was a game that puts you in the role of an emergency line operator and required you to navigate an early 90s computer interface to find out about the weird shit that people are calling in about. It starts off pretty innocent, but things get weird fast, worth playing if you love that vibe. Now, the same team, Night Signal Entertainment, has jumped ahead a decade, and their next game is called Please Insert Disc. And it is a game about navigating a haunted early 2000s game console and attempting to restore it. And look, they can't say it aloud, but it is 100% a PlayStation 2. Man, I always thought the ambient visuals and soundscape of the PS2 UI were a bit spooky, and clearly this team did too, and they've taken the ball and bolted with it. No date for this one yet, but it's just a great idea, and the vibe is strong with this one. So if you like the look of it, you can head over to our Steam Curator page, which also has links to all of the other Put This On Your Radar stuff we've recently covered. I'll leave a link to all of that below the like button. Sort of free stuff time now, and until the 1st of November, you're still going to be able to grab the great Australian house moving game Moving Out, which you should absolutely check out. It is a very good time. After that, Epic's getting in the spirit of the spooky season, perhaps a couple of days too late, but hey, it's free, so whatever. 2 games are on offer. The first is Witch Hunt, a multiplayer hide-and-seek prop hunt game. This one came out a few years back to a very positive reception on Steam, but it's just gotten a big update, so clearly the team is hoping for a huge injection of new players, because these kinds of games sure as hell don't work without a big community. The second game on offer is a really interesting one, Ghostwire Tokyo, from the studio that Microsoft tried to kill, but was too good to die, Tango Gameworks. This is a first-person action game that's more supernatural and creepy rather than outright scary. It didn't land incredibly well when it launched, but since then it's received a big update that smoothed out a lot of its issues while adding new locations, missions, and cutscenes. Kinda seems like they released it a bit too soon when you look back on it, huh? Anyway, unquestionably worth your $3 and spending some time in this haunted version of Tokyo. Xbox Game Pass hasn't properly announced the first wave of its November lineup at the time of writing, but Microsoft did already let us know that you can expect the schlocky Dead Island 2 on Halloween, as well as StarCraft 1 and 2 remastered on November 5th. Moving on to Prime Gaming, which wraps up its bumper month of games with some really great titles. The first is A Plague Tale Innocence, which is a fantastic cinematic stealth action game following two siblings during the Black Plague in the 14th century, with a lot of rats and a lot of rat powers, which are a lot of fun. Death's Door is also an excellent isometric action game from Acid Nerve and Devolve Digital, which is very worth checking out. It's got a great theme and premise. You're a crow reaping souls, uncovering a conspiracy plot. It's also got plenty of challenging isometric combat that really keeps you on your toes. That one's charming, but maybe a little less so is Scorn, which is this really gross H.R. Geiger-inspired horror game that makes you feel disgusted the entire time you play it. Also, a great excuse to play Spot the Penis. Real ones know what I'm talking about. And last for the freebies this week, and very much in the spirit of the season, look up Ghost Town Pumpkin Festival on itch.io and give it a whirl. So this is a free, very cute multiplayer pumpkin carving simulation from the solo developer behind the excellent game A Short Hike. He first launched this in 2020 during the pandemic lockdown, and it's been updated annually ever since. Basically, you get to pick your pumpkin, carve a sick pattern into it, and then head online where you can show it off to an instance town populated by 200 other players. This year, Adam's added a full-on haunted house escape room area, which is about 2 hours worth of puzzling. Definitely a wholesome way to get your Halloween vibes in. Highly recommend, and looking forward to seeing how this one grows as the years roll on. With the Dragon Age review down, I get to turn my attention back to Metaphor Refantatio, and honestly, for our feel-good story for the week, I really couldn't pass up the opportunity to just show you this live performance of the dude doing the absolutely iconic battle theme. This was recorded at Tokyo Game Show. Take a look. Man, doesn't that go incredibly hard? If this dude isn't invited to the Game Awards this year, then we have to tear that theater apart. We will not stand for it. That's the show, guys. Like I said, I'm off to play some Metaphor now, a little bit of Diablo 2, plus I'm going to check out that COD campaign. I'm not going to lie, those positive reviews, they got me on board. I am ready. It's been a long show, so really appreciate you sticking around right to the end. If you happen to have enjoyed yourself, learned something new, or God forbid, laughed at any of my jokes, then we'd love it if you could give the video a big old like, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ding the notification bell. A big thanks again for watching, and thanks to this week's sponsor, SteelSeries. They got a great new product launching this week. I think you're going to like it, so stick around to learn more. Okay, big important announcement from this video sponsor, SteelSeries, the undisputed leader in gaming peripherals, especially when it comes to their Arctis audio lineup. That lineup just got bigger because yesterday, SteelSeries released for the first time ever a set of earbuds that are meant to bridge the gap between gaming and everyday use, offering you the best of both worlds without any compromise. The Arctis Game Buds are a genuine revolution in the world of gaming and lifestyle audio because this is one product that can do it all. I mean, at a basic level, you get the excellent award-winning sound quality you've come to expect from SteelSeries, so whether you're listening to Gunfire and Call of Duty or your favorite tracks on Spotify, you're going to be getting clean, crisp highs and weighty, bassy lows. Then there's the tech that powers all of this. It supports Bluetooth, which is what you'd expect, but it also has a USB dongle that enables 2.4 GHz wireless. This is the industry standard for high-speed audio connections, way speedier and more reliable than Bluetooth, and it means the Arctis Game Buds can work with the PS5 since PS5s don't have native Bluetooth support. Since it supports both connection formats, you can actually have it connected to both 2.4 and Bluetooth at the same time, switching seamlessly between the two of them if you get a phone call, for example. And because it has that dongle, you can plug it into almost any device that has a USB-C port, including a PC, a Switch, a Steam Deck, and even a VR headset. The Arctis Game Buds also support 360-degree spatial audio, meaning they're compatible with games utilizing things like Tempest 3D Audio, Microsoft Spatial, and Sonar Surround. Plus, there's a dedicated app that lets you select from over 100 custom gaming profiles, so you can be sure you're getting the best audio experience for the most popular games. It supports active noise cancelling, so you're only hearing the sounds you want to hear, and that battery life is crazy. 10 hours without having to dock them in the charger, and the charger will charge them 3 times times for a total of 40 hours without having to plug them in. Best of all, for me at least, they stay in my ear. SteelSeries scanned over 62,000 ears to find a design that had the best chance of providing both fit and comfort, and they totally nailed it. SteelSeries sent me these early and I've been using them for the past month. For real, I could not be more satisfied with them. I use them both at home and out and about. I use the 2.4 and the Bluetooth. I use them with and without custom sound profiles. No matter what I'm doing or how I choose to do it, they always impress me, and they've instantly become a staple in the way I play games and consume audio content. If you'd like to grab a pair, then I recommend getting in quick because it's a new product launch, and anytime SteelSeries drops anything new, it always sells out super quick. Visit steelseries.com and don't forget to use offer code SKILLUP at checkout because you'll get a 12% discount, no strings attached. That's steelseries.com, offer code SKILLUP at checkout for 12% off. Thanks SteelSeries for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.